As I was preparing to take my roughly monthly trip out to Cheyenne, Wyoming from Michigan, I ran across an ad for something called Depot Days, where the old Cheyenne train depot and museum was offering a chance to, one, see their museum, but also to go out to the Steam Shop, and Union Pacific was cooperating and letting us see Big Boy 4014 and Living Legend 844. So here we are out into the Steam Shop, and they've got the tender separated. You can kind of see all of the equipment that they have out here that's available for them to work on these boilers and steam engines. They've got it set up with a stairway so you can get up into the cab, and I did that. Here's a few pictures coming up of the cab. You can see all of the different valves and so forth throughout the cab. Unfortunately, my video didn't work in the cab, and I didn't get all I have is stills for the cab. Up on the right-hand side of the cab, though, that you can't see, I didn't get a picture of, is they have some equipment that appears to be like their positive train control, some of their communications gear, so they can take this out on the network. All of these valves were labeled. It looks like they're getting ready to take the train out, because all of these have legends describing that they were, disassembled, cleaned, parts replaced, and reassembled. And every valve had a label to it. Here I was alongside the engine getting a good look, and Union Pacific had people we could talk to that explained some parts of the train. And at this point I was talking to a Boilermaker, and he was explaining how this went together with the stay bolts, and that there are down low, that there are stay bolts that thread in, and up high there are some ones that have ball joints. Also, that this used to be a coal-fired boiler back in the day, and it was fired back from the back by the cab. They've converted it to oil, and that oil burner is right about in the center of the screen, or over to the right at the front of the boiler now, and it fires from the opposite end, using what they told me was reclaimed oil. Their data sheet says number 5 oil. In any case, they said they use coal. They don't use coal because where are you going to find a coal chute these days? And so it's all set up to be used with oil. We had a lot of discussion about how you do stay bolts, and how you've got, I think they said, around 4,000 stay bolts that separate the layers of the sheet metal between the inner and the outer parts of the boiler. The Boilermaker said that there would be, in the old days, this shop probably employed 2,000 people. Today you need to have 8 or 10 trades to work on these, Boilermakers, machinists, pipe fitters, insulation, fire brick experts, and so forth. And roughly he said this machine gets about 1.5 inches longer when they fire it up and get it hot. It's a 300 PSI boiler, and to the front are it has 2 sets of 8 drive wheels, and he called them an engine. Each set of 8 is an engine. It has its own steam cylinders. There is a pivot up there toward the front so that the front engine can pivot on the tracks separately from the rear engine. He said it's really wild when you watch it go through a switch because of the way that it pivots, and then the boiler is sitting on a pad that can slide fore and aft. But this engine is just so long that it won't make it around a curve if it can't pivot in the middle. Now here's just a little better look at the steam shop. It's a large building, and I suspect in the old days it was even bigger than it is now. So here's the front view of the big boy, and you can see 844s off to the right side. Here's on the opposite side, and they were doing some work on it kind of in the center of the screen on the front engine drive wheels. It looked like they were working to replace, I'll call it one of the connecting rods on the drive wheels. And there's a view from the other side of the cab and down the side. So there's 844, and they had this platform in between the two that we could walk up and get in between both engines. There's the tender for 4014, 25,000 gallons. It's a big one. And then right next to it is the one for 844. So here's inside the cab of 844. I would guess this one isn't going out soon because it doesn't have all the labels on the valves. It's not in the process of being serviced. I was kind of amazed at how they supported the rails so they could have with these stanchions so that you could, I'll say, get underneath the train. It weighs as much as it does. Now if I go to this table, was very interesting because, so those brass pieces on the table are nozzles that are up at the front in the stack. And there are quite a number of them, I understand, but their mission is to create a swirl and create a draft in the stack. And so you can see they've got vanes in them, and they help, like I say, draw the draft on the stack. There was a man here explaining how, at this point, how the throttle valves work. At the top of the screen, those cylindrical jobs are the throttle valves for the engine. And he said there's a pilot valve that helps assist the linkage on the engine. So from the cab, there's a linkage goes down the whole length of the locomotive to the front, where those steam valves, where they sit, and then there are 7. So they get open progressively as the engineer opens the throttle. So you can see that he's showing how these open up. So, one at a time with a cam as things move forward. And then we went over to talk about stay bolts. Those are, that he's got are stay bolt taps right there. And they're a reamer and a tap. Because you have 2 layers of sheet metal, you have to tap through, when they replace one of these, the bolt goes through both layers, so that tap reams the outer hole, then threads the outer hole, then while you keep turning it, it gets to the inner hole, reams the inner hole, threads the inner hole, and apparently these bolts wear out and leak, And so then they take them out and replace them, and they start like at a 7/8 size, or 15/16 size, and go up to 1 1/8 and with a larger tab, and making the holes larger. And then they have to seal them off on the inside, usually by hammering the threads. The Boilermaker that was there was explaining to me that that technology is about 1950s technology and older, and today you don't use threaded bolts, you'd use welded bolts. And so then they allowed us to walk over to the roundhouse. I'll say what remains of the roundhouse. And turntable, this is the turntable section. And a number of old cars that they have out there. But the roundhouse stores a number of their restored, what they call heritage pieces. So there's the snow blower, and you can see that big auger. It has a 2,500 horsepower turbo diesel that does nothing but turn the auger, and it drives a generator at 600 volts that then has a 600 volt DC motor that drives the auger through a gearbox. Quite the setup, and it cannot move under its own power. That 2,500 horsepower is just to turn the auger, and then they have a separate diesel locomotive that goes behind and provides the propulsion for it. This one is the business car. The business car was supposed to have a staff of 4, a Union Pacific executive and immediate staff, that he could do business from out on the rails. I mean, they could cook, they could do meals, they could do mail. He could run his whole office from out on the tracks. And then you have these GM electromotive locomotives, and they're restored. They said they all operate. Some of them, they have new engines in them, and have not been out on the rails in some number of years. I think he said 12 years since this 949 was out. He was also pointing out to me up in the cab there's a white box. Essentially, these even those old ones have dash cams and event recorders, so that if there's an incident out on the railway, that they have evidence of it, and can show what happened. And this is an observation car from back in the passenger train days, where people could go up on top and watch the scenery while they were riding. Down at the end here was 838, and 838 is not being restored. It is a sister to that 844, and essentially it's a parts machine. They just scavenge off of it to be able to keep 844 running. And here's a look at the depot from back behind the roundhouse. The main line tracks are in between. And here's the back of the roundhouse. They say it was much larger in the old days. They've removed much of the roundhouse, and this is all that remains of it. The depot itself is historic. It's one of the last remaining depots, I guess, in the country like that, and it's been restored and is now, a museum. So from the museum side looking back, there's the roundhouse, and the steam shop is on the left. Here is a car that I saw coming in that was a track safety inspection car. Here's a look at what City of Cheyenne looked like back in the 1800s. Here's one with a picture, aerial view of the roundhouse and the steam shop from back in the 1940s time frame. And once again, what they look like today. And I made a video earlier about what the Transcontinental Railway had to go through and what, about the elevations out here and what I learned. Here's a quick map of it. And the museum had some things about how the old locomotives got scrapped. Up on the upper floor of the museum is a very extensive model train layout. It's very fancy, and it's I just say very extensive. I mean, you can spend a lot of time walking through there and looking at all the scenery and the little trains. And then to wrap it up here, there are a couple pictures here from with the specs for the 844 and the 4014 off of Union Pacific's website. You can kind of see what all the data is that they had, and how big these dudes are, and that's what I learned at Steam Shop and in the museum. And there are a lot of exhibits in the museum around this railroad and its history, and I may have to go back sometime and spend some more time with it, because it's pretty fascinating if you're into railroads.